Great. Hello and welcome everyone to our North Africa Alumni webinar. This is the final of a series of 4 that we've been hosting over the month. So appreciate taking the time out of your afternoon, morning, or midday to join us today. I hope that everyone is staying safe wherever in the world you're dialing in from. So just to quickly introduce myself in the session today, my name is Mischa Ragona and I'm one of the recruitment and admission managers for the Oxford MBA. I'm joined today by my colleague Tammy Brophy, who is our Africa Initiative Manager, as well as 3 of our alum who you will be hearing from shortly. To start the webinar, I'm going to pass it off to Tammy, who will give an overview of Oxford's commitment to Africa and what that means for you as a prospective student. I'll jump back on to do a quick program overview, and then we'll get started with the alumni Q&A. The panel will serve as the main content for today, and I'll be asking various questions around their specific MBA program journey, which will hopefully cover some inside information about the Oxford MBA. We won't go into detail on the general application requirements, so please do get in touch with the team after the session if you've got specific profile or program questions that were not addressed. Okay, great. So over to you, Tammy.
Great, thank you so much, Mischa, and thank you all so much for joining us. I hope that you and your families are well, especially during this pandemic, which we all realize is affecting a number of people across the globe. And I'm sure many of you must also be seeing that in times like these, it really does emphasize the need for great management and great leadership, both within government and business. In fact, more and more we are seeing the real significant role that business plays in society, especially in addressing some of the most major challenges in the world, for example, COVID-19. So for us here at Oxford Said, we truly believe that the Oxford MBA plays such a significant role in helping many of our students develop as responsible leaders, but also assist them in navigating some of the rapid challenges or changes within Africa's dynamic markets. So I wanted to chat a little bit more around our Africa initiative at the business school. So on our first slide, it will give you an overview of that Africa initiative. As you all know, Africa is becoming a very increasingly important region on the global stage. The World Bank has predicted that by 2035, the number of Africans of working age is predicted to be larger than the combined working populations in all other regions. And along with many opportunities on the continent, African countries also do face a very particular array of economic, political, and social environments that create very unique business challenges. So therefore, for us, we believe there becomes an increased need for leaders who can navigate those challenges, but also access the opportunities that are on the continent. So to provide a little bit more context on that Africa initiative and sort of how it started and where it began, back in 2014, a pledge was made by the Dean, Professor Peter Tufano, at the 2014 World Economic Forum on Africa to have at least 10% of our MBA students coming from Africa. Now, to put that number into perspective, most international MBA programs have on average only 2% of their class coming from Africa. Therefore, we were really truly making a substantial commitment to have that 10%. As a community, we believe that by having a significant number of African students, we really are able to therefore provide a direct insight into a range of exciting emerging economies in Africa, as I said, that are very influential in the global marketplace, but also to educate many of our non-African students of the opportunities on the continent. So following that pledge, we became very purposeful in our recruitment to ensure that we could increase accessibility to a broad range of African prospects. We've done this by hosting a number of school-led information events in country and online, such as this webinar today. We also created dedicated scholarships for our students from Africa. In fact, more than 65% of our African students each year receive a scholarship or bursary from the business school. Part of that commitment has actually been through the Dean and his wife, who have personally funded the Africa Dean Scholarship, which I'll chat in a little bit more detail in the next few slides. But we're also very proud to have had more than 10% of our class coming from Africa for the last 4 years. In fact, in the current class, we have 13% from Africa, representing 12 different African nationalities and countries, and 54% of those African students are women. So ensuring diversity, both from a nationality point of view, as well as diversity from a gender and sector and background, was really very important for us. So although we also, though, recognize for many of you that gaining some international experience post-MBA is useful, we also want to ensure that we're not simply taking talent away and not supporting candidates to return. Therefore, a major part of our Africa initiative is really to include some African-focused content. And I'll chat a little bit more, but these include things like Africa-focused electives, both in Africa and in Oxford, Africa-based case studies or on different African businesses, events, speakers, creating new networks and opportunities during and post-MBA to really strengthen our network in Africa. So on the next slide, this is just a snapshot of some of the activities that we host. We have, as I mentioned already, the Africa Scholarships. Every year we run the Oxford Africa Business Forum, so it's our annual event. It's been running for more than 11 years now. And we bring thought leaders to the continent, from the continent to speak on different topics that are really important in Africa. So we focused on the free trade agreement, for example, a couple of years ago, the youth of Africa, the African consumer. So it's really great, I think, for speakers to be able to come to Oxford and really engage with that student body, with the alumni body, and with the MBA students, of course. We have the Oxford Africa Business Alliance. So the Africa Alliance is formerly known as the Africa OBN, which is essentially was the Africa Student Club. And we took that to another level. So to really reinforce the school's commitment to Africa, we created the Africa Business Alliance, which is a joint partnership and a joint network between both students and the school. So we have both staff and student representatives that focus on a range of different activities and topics, and really drive that Africa initiative forward. We have Africa-focused electives. Those, as I mentioned, we have one in Africa as well as a few in Oxford. And what's quite, I think, important to note is that the very first international elective that was ever created for the business school was the Africa elective. So we have about 60 students that go out to Africa each year. They focus on a topic called growth prospects and opportunities for business in Africa. And it's a really great way, as I mentioned in the beginning, for both African students that are very interested and committed to returning to Africa, but also the non-African students that are looking to get further insight into what it is like to do business in Africa. We host a number of different events throughout the year, so distinguished speakers events. We've had heads of state and CEOs, entrepreneurs, and other business leaders on the continent. We do workshops, as well as large-scale events. And I think what's important to note is that these are not just events whereby you sit in a very large lecture theatre. It may be that for many candidates that attend these events, but primarily it's a way for us to create opportunities for the MBA students to have personal engagement with some of these speakers. So some of these events can be on a much smaller scale, so you have a one-to-one sort of level of engagement, as well as personalized dinners and other sort of speaking events that might be more useful for students wanting to gain direct insight from these people. We have a number of different alumni chapters across the continent, as well as different alumni groups, and I'm sure our alumni can speak a little bit more into the detail around how they've utilized that Oxford network, whether it's through the business school, through their colleges, or the wider university. And last point to just mention is the Africa Student Treks. We have global student treks, so you as a student group can actually choose to do a trek anywhere, but we do have treks that take place in Africa, and groups of students will go out again and either engage with companies, get a bit of a cultural experience as well. And it's been phenomenal to see the impact from just spending some time in Africa and how that's led to, non-Africans now working in Africa, some of our African students changing countries and working in different countries across the continent. And then I'll just end off on the last slide from my point of view, and that's to talk about scholarships. So as I mentioned, scholarships we recognize as a significant barrier, or funding is a significant barrier to coming to study at an international program such as Oxford. So we've created a number of dedicated scholarships for candidates that hold an African nationality or are based in Africa at the point of applying. This is not the full list, and I would encourage you to go to our website and really do some research into some of the additional scholarships that are available. Some of them are more sector focused, and many of them are based on merit. But if you go through this list, some of the scholarships are full scholarships, some are partial scholarships, some require essays, and some just require you essentially submitting an application. You'll automatically be considered. Just a few to highlight. So there's the Oxford Adara Foundation Scholarship. So that's a full scholarship, and it's available for African women. There is a preference for Nigerian women, but it is available for all women from Africa. The Any Oxford Africa Scholarship is a new scholarship, and it's a full scholarship again. You don't need to do anything to be considered for that. Just by being successful on the program, you'd be considered for that. And as I mentioned, there's the Africa Dean Scholarship, and just to sort of re-emphasize how, again, it's definitely the Dean's personal commitment to driving the Africa initiative that him and his wife personally fund this scholarship each year. So this will be in our 5th year that we've had the Africa Dean Scholarship. So I would say go through all these scholarship opportunities. Do not let funding be the barrier to applying in the first place. I would encourage you to trust in that process. You will not know if you have been successful for one of our scholarships until you have received an offer for the program. And then finally, I would say consider some of the options on the right hand side of the slide. You can see Prodigy Finance, company sponsorship, and the Chevening Scholarship. And understand that this is an investment in both, financial means, but also your time, and you really should see this as an investment into that. And with that, I'll hand over to Mischa so she can give you a brief overview into the program before we chat with our alumni. Thanks so much.
Great, perfect. Thank you so much, Tammy. So before we move on to the main part of the webinar, I wanted to briefly touch on what your year at Oxford will look like. So this is a snapshot of the program at a glance. It does change from year to year, so this is a general idea of what you can expect. The Oxford MBA is a 1-year program, a very intense year, running September until the following September. The program is broken into 4 semesters, starting with launch and finishing off with a capstone. The first semester, the program will cover your core MBA topics as highlighted in red. There are 8 core modules that every student will complete as integrated business fundamentals. These topics include firms and markets, strategy, accounting, finance, and analytics, to name a few. This will be a very intense period of your program where you will learn to balance your in-classroom teaching and the wide range of resources provided through SBS, Oxford University, the Career Centre, and your colleges, which the alum will speak to in more detail. So as we transition into the second semester, students can start to tailor the curriculum by selecting electives to meet their learning objectives. There are around 40+ electives offered. So for example, if you were interested in finance, you could take a deep dive into courses such as financial market trading, private equity, and corporate valuation. Or if you were interested in a social impact route, you could take courses such as social finance, strategy and innovation, and impact investing. I'll also highlight the entrepreneurial project that every student will work on starting in Hillary term, which is our 2nd semester. This entrepreneurship course and project will allow you to develop and complete a business plan and present it to a panel of invited venture capitalists and other practitioners. So in groups, you will have to develop and put forward a well-managed plan, including financials, patents, market intelligence, and investment needs. If you already run a business or have an idea, this is a great chance to develop new products or business models in a safe environment. So moving on to the summer term, although it is a 1-year program, we still provide opportunities for working internships for credit, which are critical for those candidates who are looking to transition country, industry, or function. Lastly, I'll mention the co-curriculars that are pictured on the bottom running the full duration of the program. These co-curriculars are non-credit programming that allow you to take a deep dive into topics through workshops, tutorials, expert speakers, and industry events. So these include Finance Lab, Impact Lab, and the Consulting Development Program. So for example, if you are interested in transitioning, say, from engineering to consulting, the Consulting Development Program is based around the hiring processes of global consulting recruiters. So you'll be coached through practical workshops, recruiter-led case events, and be given access to online resources and tools. These are fantastic opportunities for those with specific career goals. So on the next slide, this will give you an idea of what the class profile will look like and who you can expect to be your classmates while on the MBA. As you see, we have referenced ranges, not averages. So as you assess your application, please don't look at your suitability based on averages you may see listed. Our admissions team is more interested on what the strength of your specific profile is. And this does include your past experiences as well as your career goals going forward. It's a very holistic application process, and each student will have their own individual story. Lastly, I'll note that the class is extremely diverse, with over 64 nationalities represented to enhance your day-to-day learning experience and your global network going forward. In terms of placement post-program, 54% of the class are in Europe, including the UK, and 50% would place in consulting and finance. The next top industries would be social impact, technology, consumer packaged goods, and energy. Again, our recruitment team would be happy to go over your profile and suitability for the program, so do get in touch as part of your MBA exploration. So on that note, we'll move to the next slide and onto the alumni panel. And I'd like to welcome Fuad, Amal, and Mohammed and ask if they could please join us and turn on their webcam at this time. And fingers crossed that the technology works. Here we go. Great, welcome.
Hi.
Perfect. Great, thank you so much. So as a place to start, I'm going to ask each of you to give a brief introduction where you are located right now and what you're doing for work. So Fuad, could you start us off, please?
Yes, of course. So I'm currently in Cairo, where I work at the Central Bank of Egypt. I'm one of the senior financial officers in the markets team. I guess that's a very, very quick summary.
Okay, perfect. Mohammed, do you want to go next?
Sure. So my name is Mohammed. I am currently in Cairo with my family, but I live in London. I run a consulting firm that's called Oxcon, which works with the public sector, so government and international organizations, on economic development strategies in Africa and the Middle East.
Fabulous, thanks. And Amal.
Hi everyone, my name is Amal. I'm currently Senior Vendor Manager at Amazon for pet care products, and I'm based in Paris.
Great, okay, thank you. So let's start us off here with Amal. So you were one of our African scholars as well as part of the Africa Alliance. Could you talk us through some of the benefits of the Africa focus at the school?
Yeah, sure. So as you probably know, MBAs tend to be a little bit more centered on the US, Europe, and to a lesser extent, Asia. But most of the MBA programs don't actually talk about Africa at all. And I really wanted to keep this connection with Africa because my midterm plans involve me going back home to Morocco, and also the fact that my last job, I've worked extensively in the continent. So I really wanted to keep that network. So through the scholarship, through the Africa Alliance, I was able to be paired to meet people in the program that are from Africa as well. So I built a really strong network of people who share the same interests in the continent, who have different experiences, case studies to share. I was also able to attend different talks, to meet different speakers that focus on Africa. I helped organize the Africa Forum, which was really, really useful and helpful to meet people who are interested in the continent as well. And so all of these elements are really important and are not available in other MBA programs.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, Mohammed, I'll ask you. Your work takes you overwhelmingly across the African continent, and you've studied in the US and Egypt. So why did you choose the UK program, and specifically the Oxford MBA over, say, a US program?
That's a good question. So actually, the Oxford MBA program was the only MBA I applied for on that year. It was either this or nothing. But I appreciated that it was so this, as you mentioned, that wasn't my first graduate degree. So I appreciated that it was a one-year program, not two, is one thing. I appreciated also that that SBS is quite well embedded within Oxford, which was something that's important to me because my work tends to be rather, multidisciplinary. So we'll work a lot with, people focusing on economic development, people focusing on sort of more other social sciences. So that connection with other schools, with other departments was very important to me. And I guess if I'll add one thing is that I appreciated a lot, sort of echoing a little bit what Amal was saying there, that unlike a lot of the MBA programs which I've seen in the US, this is not a program that is single-minded trying to get people out of an MBA to go work in management consulting or to go work in finance, which are in most schools, I will say, are perhaps the largest two sectors where people end up working. So SBS was not at all sort of in that mindset of an assembly chain where students will go out and work necessarily in these sectors. They're absolutely an option, and there's a lot of opportunities to sort of focus a lot more on finance or management consulting if that's what you want. But it also was quite open and give you a wide range of options. We had a lot of people coming from the social sector as well. So I really appreciated that diversity and the fact that it wasn't sort of predetermined towards one thing. It really opened up opportunities more than anything else.
Great. Yeah, and that's definitely what we sort of mention and talk to students about is the diversity of thought in the classroom and the different type of students that the program attracts. Everyone's coming with their own background, and it's not just focused on, say, one industry specifically, although of course that does exist. You do get that diversity of conversation and thought in your day-to-day. Okay, perfect. So Fuad, kind of to go on the other side of that, to the finance sort of side of things, you have a passion for venture capital and private equity. How do you feel the MBA supported your career goals? Could you speak about some of the tools and activities available to you that you engaged with, including the finance lab?
Yes, of course. So as starters, so where I ended up is in finance at the central bank, and I think one of them, actually exactly one of the main reasons why I ended up there was because of the electives I chose at school. Because I remember in my interview, one of the main things that attracted and brought interest from the interviewers was when I discussed with them my paper on financial crises, which is an elective, and as well the machine learning part I learned in big data and finance. And these are two electives in the program. And as an example, these electives accompanied by many others, whether core or electives, were to me like the cherry on top, because the cake is Oxford itself, the cake is the school itself, the courses are the cherry on top. So I think that's one of the good parts, is that you have a lot of courses that, at least from a finance perspective, you can take, and you're not just gonna learn how to do things, you're gonna learn how to do them with teachers that are incredible, professors that are incredible. I still, until now, I text the private equity professor whenever there's something related to private equity that I don't know or I need to ask something about. Same thing with venture capital. The two courses that I would say were very important for me from a PE and VC perspective is the PE course and the VC course. Professor Thomas Hellman is a great guy. You can learn so much from him in venture capital, and he worked with us also in the entrepreneurship project. So to take his experience from both sides were extremely useful to understand how, like, I had a startup around 7 years ago and it didn't work out. Because of the elective, I knew why it didn't work out and I knew how I could have made it better. On the private equity side, combining private equity and finance lab was amazing because private equity is very different than other private equity courses. And if somebody is following the private equity professor, he'll know that he's different from other private equity practitioners. And the way he does it is very different than how the market does it. And you combine it with finance lab, which is something that used to be one time a week, and you get through some of the tools and learnings you need. And then the other half of the session, you had one of the big banks, one of the big private equity funds, one of the big private equity recruiters. They come, they give you a session about, for example, a deal they made, or how they look for candidates, or what kind of deals they look for. And then you get the chance to network with these people. And you end up, by the end of the, for example, finance lab, you built a network with people from Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, a lot of big places that, to be honest, without the finance lab or without Oxford, you wouldn't have gotten to them that easy. So I would say, from a finance perspective, it was, you could tailor it to be finance, although, not to go overboard with this, but that was just half of the courses I took. The other half wasn't even finance related, and I enjoyed them equally as much, and I learned from them equally as much. So you could really mix it up and get to know a lot about a lot.
That's great. And I think, yeah, the way the program's structured with your core, it allows you to take a deep dive into something you're interested in, and then also complement that with topics that maybe you haven't even explored before, entrepreneurship or something completely different from sort of what your background is. So there's lots to take in. Okay, great. So switching gears here a little bit. So for Mohammed, we kind of mentioned this Africa Business Forum. We've, Amal, you talked about that as well. So you've been a speaker at the Oxford Africa Business Forum. What impact do you feel the Africa Forum has on driving the Africa narrative for the students especially?
In addition, so there's the Africa Business Forum, which we organize, and there's also, if you'll allow me to add, was the Oxford Africa Conference, which is more university-wide, and which sort of through the Africa OBN at SBS is something that we like. So the African students at SBS participate in organizing that in my year as well. So it was also something else. I had a blast. It was a really, really enjoyable conference. I really appreciated the level of interest from sort of university-wide. So it really wasn't, how do I say that? It was an Africa-centric, it was definitely an Africa-centric event. However, the interest was much, much wider, in the sense that both in the speakers, but also in the attendees, and also people sort of who stayed in touch with us after that, us as in organizers and speakers, it really had a very strong, definitely there's like a real hunger for more Africa-related content at SBS and at the university in general. And I think that was like a definitely flagship event for that. I appreciate a lot that the content of the conference is very, is largely, it's like student driven to a large extent. Like people are determining what are the priorities, what are the things that they want highlighted, what are the things that we want to discuss, who are the key speakers we want to invite and whatnot. So there's like a really good process that's happening between the students, between the organizers, between Tammy and all the crew. So, it's a really good, it's a very, very good event, which definitely, I'll try to go to again.
Okay, great. So building then on some of the events outside of the classroom, Amal, I know that there are a number of activities outside of the classroom that you got involved with. Is there anything you can share with us about your college experience or life at Oxford, and what was your favorite?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to talk about something that is a little bit in the middle between outside of classes and inside of classes. I have a passion for health and wellness, and I was never really sure how to bring that with business together. I was really delighted to find out that there was a mindfulness in business program at SBS, and so I took the class as it wasn't an elective, and so I say it's a class. Half of it is actually the theoretical science and background behind how mindfulness is important in business, and the other part is actually practice. So literally we would spend 20 minutes of the session doing mindfulness. So that was an amazing experience. It's a 6 weeks a training, and it led me to dig deeper. And I found out that Oxford actually has a mindfulness center, and it's the largest center of mindfulness embedded in a university in the world, which is a really a great deal. And it led me to dig deep, and I was also able to enroll in a separate class of mindfulness with my college, where they actually teach us the basics of mindfulness applied to our personal lives. So to help us be present, be mindful, and how that is actually also important in our everyday's life. And I was really amazed at the information and at the benefits that are actually proven scientifically of mindfulness in business and in life in general. So that's definitely one of them. And we still have a group that meets from that class, from that course or class today, to do mindfulness once a week on Sundays. So that's one. And there were also so many different programs. I think I'm a nerd. I'm really going to speak a lot about the programs and the classes outside of of traditional classes. There was a leadership program that was also really interesting. I did not personally apply to it, but I know a lot of people who did, and it's a leadership program across Oxford. So they put together people from different schools and train them to become a more effective leader. And the feedback I got was really amazing. I wish I had participated to this program. So just to say that there are so many things. Of course, there are sport events. You can tell it's not my thing, but there are so many different things to do within the university, within SBS, and also with your college. So just make sure to do your research ahead of time so that you don't miss any deadlines to apply to these different programs and events. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, great, thank you. So Fuad, as a sort of finance-focused individual, you mentioned there's so much more outside of that. So what do you feel are some of the strongest values of the school, and what kind of candidate do you think the school attracts?
So I think if I have to sum up the values of the school and their candidates, I think the major one that stands out is compassionate. And in the sense that, for example, in one of the courses I had difficulties with it, and the people I relied on were my classmates. They didn't just get me through it, they got me through it, and I got through it learning everything that I needed to learn from the course. And I think that is one of the main values that SBS looks for in their candidates, is that you're not just somebody who's gonna come and study for 12 months and leave and that's it, that's life. No, you're gonna be somebody who's going to be helping others, who's going to be receiving help from others. You really feel, you're not gonna of course feel like family with 400 people, but you're really gonna feel like family with a large group of people. You're gonna stick with them. You're gonna call them every other week or every week after the MBA. You're gonna feel like you're not going to class at the university. This is a degree I just need to take and go home. You're gonna feel like I want to be here. These are the people I want to learn from, I want to learn with, I want to be with. And then honestly, you're gonna cry on the last day. It's as simple as that. And that's I think one of the main things that the SBS looks for, is people that will bring something different to the table, yet they'll all be the same in the sense that they'll all help each other. They'll all want to help each other. I think that would be the main value. I think the kind of people the school attracts is people from everything. We had, and Amal is in my same cohort, she can stand for this, and I'm sure Muhammad had the same in his course. We had people from every single discipline. We had people from all ages. We had people from all nationalities. It's extremely different in a good way, because I don't know, I stand and I remember, for example, one of our classmates, he had a degree from MIT and a degree from Harvard, and he was with us, and you talk to him and it's okay, my mind is blown. And then you go and talk to another person, and she's a surgeon in Nigeria with 5 kids, who she used to have 2 of the little ones with her in class, and your mind is blown. And then you go and talk to somebody else, and again, your mind is blown. So it's, if there's a summary, is that there's going to be around like 300 people who are going to blow your mind. Very rarely would you find one of them who would be like, oh, he's normal. No, nobody's normal.
That's great. Thank you so much. Okay, Mohammed, would you be able to tell us a little bit about your involvement in any of the networks for students, and maybe mention what college you are a part of and sort of how the college system works? And I might get
sure.
you to follow up about the colleges as well, just to add into that.
Cool. All right, so my college name was Merton College, which is one of the very old colleges, which is something I'm very proud of. And everyone who's a student and everyone who's a professor at Oxford is affiliated to one of the colleges, and it's a big part of your social and extracurricular life. So, for instance, the athletics or joining, sports activities and a host of other activities really is usually occurs through the college, and less so through the department or through your school. So during my time there, so what kind of activities did I do? So as Amal said, there's a whole lot of things to be done. So it really is a difficult choice, picking what are the activities you want to be part of. But my advice would be to experiment as many as you can and start early, because deadlines fly fast in a short period. So I was part of the Africa OBN. OBNs are sort of the student network, shall we say, and a couple of others. I joined one of the mentorship programs at SBS, which is called the VIEW program. The incubator programs at SBS. I was a mentor on that. At my college, I joined the rowing team. I was unbelievably bad, and I had an absolutely great time. In addition to that, yes, I try to venture as much as possible, sort of across the wide sort of smorgasbord of options that we have. That was an advice I got from someone who did SBS the year before mine, and part of his advice was that it's really easy to, sort of echoing Fuad a little bit, it's really easy to spend your entire year with just your cohort, because it's a fun group, and like you work hard, play hard. But it would be a loss to sort of not venture out of that wonderful bubble consciously. So like endless options are available, and yeah, I mean, prepare for a year of very, very little sleep and serious work hard, play hard mentality. Is there anything you want me to elaborate on? By means, let me know.
No, that sounds great. Did Amal or Fuad want to add about sort of your college experience? Did you have a different college, or great, go for it.
Thanks. So I went to Kibo. Kibo, it's not one of the oldest, but it's one of the nicest from a chapel perspective and the dining hall. And I think
it's beautiful. I agree.
Yeah, and the dining part, I think we need to stand there for a second, because one of the things that you'll get to do when you go to Oxford is have formal dinners in colleges. And this is pure Harry Potter stuff. You wear your robes, you're only missing a wand, basically. And it's large halls, you have a seating, it's a 3-course meal, everything is great. And you try one in your college in the first week or so, and you feel like, this is nice. I think this is perfect. And then you talk to one of your cohort and he says, oh, ours is amazing. And you feel like, you know what, I want to come to yours. And then you end up feeling like, okay, there's, I don't know, 38 colleges or something like that. You feel like, I want to go to 38 different formal dinners. And then it becomes this obsessive thing that I have to go to every formal dinner. And the college itself is a bit different, because usually you'll have like undergrads there mostly, and you'll get to meet the grads in the senior and the common room and all of that. And for example, I joined sports with my college in shooting, clay pigeon shooting, and it's amazing. And then you feel like, okay, they send the text, oh, we're going to a football match. You feel like, yes, I want to do that. But then people at school are saying something else. And you feel torn between your college and your school, but it's good way torn. It's not bad way torn. You feel like I need to do both. And so yeah, I think the college part is and this is I have a lot of friends who went to other business schools, US and UK side. And honestly, I am zero envious of them, and I know how much they're envious of me because of that kind of experience that you'll only get in Oxford. That college thing, that whole town thing, that Oxford Union thing. You'll feel like there's so much stuff that you can do in a year, and it's not enough. And you feel like, okay, after the MBA, I moved to London for a while. Every other weekend, I go back to Oxford, just do something, either go to the union or I don't know, meet up with some people from my college and so on. You feel like, okay, this is a whole lot more than simply this is a university in London or I don't know in Massachusetts and so on. No, it's different. That's my experience. Amal can add more.
That's great. It certainly is an extremely unique and different experience that people don't really even kind of understand the college experience or what the system is coming in. So it's great to have your personal experience in that. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just completely echo everything that was said. I think they've covered all grounds. I just want to add that I mean, you can also meet people from your colleges elsewhere because they're everywhere around the world. I unfortunately didn't know anyone from my college. I was from my college is St. Catherine, but my colleague at Amazon, who's also from the MBA, knows a few French people who were attending Oxford and who came back to France, and so now we all hang out together here in Paris. And so it's really important to see the strength of that network, because people from your colleges and your friends' colleges will literally be everywhere in the world. And don't get me started about the union. That was one of the best things ever. I loved and enjoyed so much going to the talks and seeing the different type of speakers that were brought every time. And that's also the strength of, I think, Oxford, because in other MBAs, I've heard from my friends that they really bring them they bring them the best in specific fields that usually are linked to the business school. We got the chance to see literally everyone. I mean, from the comedians, American comedians who came to talk about their shows and about censorship in the US, to a former Prime Minister of Sweden, to so I mean, so many different people and different things. I forgot what's that really famous brand of perfumes in the UK is. Joe Malone. Joe Malone came as well. So, you know, it came from all different backgrounds. And so it was really, really insightful. And it's definitely one of the strengths and differences for your experience at Oxford.
Great, perfect. And I'll actually just get you to follow up with sort of a career focused question. What are the key areas of the program that were the most useful for you in aiding you to make a career transition post-MBA? What electives or activities did you find most beneficial?
Sure. So I had a business background before doing the MBA. So the business part was useful as a refresher. But from my experience, from talking to other people who, for example, one of the people in our cohort is actually a doctor, medical doctor, and he wanted to move into business. So the business foundation was really important for him in order to make that move. In my case, what was really useful is the Career Center. And I know that usually career centers are, let's say, the thing that students complain the most about in every single school. I've never met someone who's done an MBA who didn't complain about their career center. People from MBAs at Yale, Harvard, everywhere. But I think in Oxford, I mean, at SBS more specifically, what was useful is, first of all the events that were planned. So for example, I attended a workshop about advanced Excel that was really useful. SQL, SQL, which is like a language that I was told was going to be useful at Amazon. So I took that class, for example, that workshop, and it was organized by the Career Center. And also one-to-one appointments with your career advisor. And if at first you think you can get more from your career advisor, you can also switch and try and try get in a one-to-one with someone else, because what matters is to find the right fit with the right career advisor. So make sure you actually find the person with whom you have the perfect fit. I, for example, was talking to someone who used to work at Amazon actually, and he was very useful at putting me in contact with people so that I can understand the culture better, pre and post offer. So that was really, really useful. Another thing that was helpful was to attend the different workshops and events. So for example, there was the marketing summit. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm killing the name and it's not the right one, but there was a yearly marketing summit that was organized by SBS by one of our esteemed professors there. And this actually was really useful because I got to talk to several people who actually work in marketing, and a lot of them, I added a lot of them on LinkedIn. We had several conversations, and I was connected with the right people in HR in their company. So that's also very useful. And one final word, definitely try to do things that will help you think outside of the box. I took one of my electives was called Identification in Social Sciences, which is technically a statistics class. I mean, never have I ever dreamed of taking an elective. I mean, a statistics class is an elective. Like, it's definitely not me. But I took the class based on the feedback of other people and who told me that it was really interesting class, and I absolutely do not regret it. It was definitely statistics, but as the professor says, without the numbers. So we really learned how to think about things in a different way. And until today, I still speak to some of my friends about some of the theoretical knowledge we've learned and how we could apply it during the lockdown, for example, pandemic, and make studies to see if behaviors have changed or not. So do stretch yourself a little bit, at least in the electives and the workshops. Try to see what's out there and what will help you think differently, things that are outside of your comfort zone. They might not be nice to experience maybe the first few days, but then you will definitely enjoy them. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. Fuad, do you have any comments about sort of why you wanted to do an MBA, and anything about your research process into it, and when you think the right time to do an MBA is?
So regarding wanting to do an MBA, so ever since I was in my undergrad, which was a technical degree, I knew that I'd need to do a master's degree because, well, honestly, the world now is a bit different than it was in our parents' generation. And as such, it's no longer the undergrad is enough. So you're gonna do a master's. My question was always, do I do a master's in a specific field, or do I do an MBA, which is more generic and it covers a better or wider range? And then after a while in work, as I moved from a technical job to a more financial job and so on, I felt like this is the right moment to do an MBA so that I can not just shift towards more the private equity, venture capital, well, let's call it serious finance part. Not just that, but to shift into that with something that can give me the edge to go even further within it. And I think that what got me started to look into MBAs. Now, when I started looking into where I want to do the MBA, to be honest, I'm Europe biased. Proximity issue to Egypt, I wanted to be close to home. And honestly, I enjoy Europe more than I enjoy the US. And then, okay, so it's Europe, we're in Europe. And then you start to look into the different kinds of programs. You look for, not to mention other names, but you look into Oxford, Cambridge, LBS, IE, IESE, you look into all of these. And then you hope usually that something sticks out. And this is exactly what happened, is that when I looked into them, Oxford stood out, and it stood out boldly. And it stood out boldly for multiple reasons. One of the main reasons is what we've been trying to, I don't know, convey, the three of us, which is very hard to convey on a call, which is the whole Oxford experience. You can go, for example, to LBS, and all you're gonna get is some really good classes, some really good, I don't know, banking or consulting people that come give you a couple of sessions. It will be interesting, but that's the experience, is the classes. and a little bit of your cohort, or you even just your cohort. But what you have in Oxford is something that you can't get anywhere else. That college experience, that school experience, that town experience. You're not in London where there's, I don't know, 18 different other universities and 50, I don't know, large areas. No, you're in Oxford, you can go all the way around Oxford with a bike or walking. That is something that is unique. And although I'm not talking here about credentials of, I don't know, the ranking or so on, it's because when you want to do an MBA, it goes beyond that. You want to do an MBA, you want to develop on a skills level, and you want to develop as a person. Skills level, you can get it in a lot of places, not just Oxford, that's true. But personal level, I think this is where Oxford shines. You develop so much on your personal level, and you develop so much on your intellectual level. You could go to talks about nuclear science, and literally you know nothing about nuclear science more than The Simpsons. But you can go there and you can learn a lot. And that's part of Oxford, is that you're not just learning your core stuff, you're learning everything. And it teaches you honestly a lot more about yourself than a lot about other things, which is, I think, one was why I think my year is different than anybody who did an MBA otherwhere than Oxford. So I think that was the main reason why I went with Oxford. And of course, it does help that the university is probably the oldest university in the world. And it does help that you have a network of, I don't know, a couple of million people around the world. Of course, that all helps. But in the end, it's the program, when you read it, when you see what kind of experience the program will provide within the school and within the university and within the town, you feel like you can't go wrong with this.
That's great. Thanks. You should come on all of our recruitment trips with us.
Sure.
Okay, so Mohammed, just thinking about those who are on the call right now, do you have any advice to share as people are looking into programs and the application process itself?
So looking into programs, I think, okay, so, and I think an important thing to think about is, why do you want to do an MBA to begin with? An MBA is not the right answer for everyone. It is extremely beneficial for some people, and for some other people, perhaps you'd be more suited for something like, when, as Fouad was saying earlier about whether as he debated between doing an MBA or doing a more technical degree. This is a really important question that everyone needs to ask themselves. I think MBAs are an amazing opportunity to learn a wide range of things while also doing quite a bit of self-discovery. And that's the mindset that I would encourage everyone who's considering applying to MBAs to go on with. I would also strongly advise people to not try to do an MBA shortly after they finish their first degree. Definitely have a few years of work experience between your first degree and when you're applying for graduate school. So these are, I mean, these are the main points. It's actually also very relevant for people who are at transition phase and who want to take a step back, learn skills, and potentially change industries. MBAs are an amazing time to do that. For the application process, more specifically, so one tidbit of advice that I always give to people who are applying: you will have to go through your standardized tests, your GMATs and whatnot. The advice that I always give for GMATs is get the advanced books. So you have sort of regular training books, and then you have the ones that are called GMAT 800 or whatever, that are sort of the advanced level exam and mock exams books. That is definitely the best way to go about studying for your GMAT. So that would be my my advice regarding this. Another important part of the application is, well, while you're in the process of applying, you're sort of selling your own story, right? You're talking to a school. It's like, this is who I am, this is where I want to go. And it's important that your sort of your story contains these three elements: who you are, where you want to go, and the third one, which people often miss, is how do you think this degree will help you reach where you want to go, right? So sort of that's from the perspective of a recruiter. These are things that a recruiter will be interested in seeing in your application. Be honest, because there's very little reason not to, because recruiters are very much open to sort of the wide diversity of people that we are and the experiences that we bring. And like, you definitely, like, if you're going to join a school, you want to do it sort of open-heartedly, shall we say. So that would be my advice for people who are at the recruitment phase. If people have specific questions and want to reach out directly, I'd be more than happy to talk to people or reply to emails.
That's great. Thanks so much. And yes, that GMAT piece can be a big roadblock for people. So good tip on that one. And then the career sort of goals and where you want to go after the program is a big part for us as well on the application. So really understanding what your skill set is and where you think you're going to go post-program. So for Amal, we've got a few minutes left here. Would you say that you found the MBA worthwhile? And do you have any tips or advice to share?
Yeah, definitely worthwhile. On a personal level, on a professional level, on an academic level, it ticks all the boxes. Maybe some of the tips that I think Mohammed really covered all the points. It was really meaty and straight to the point, so good one. The GMAT was definitely one of those roadblocks for me. But just take it easy, take some time off of work if you can. You want to invest time but not drive yourself crazy either. Find that right space in between, because it is an important component of your entire application. It's important to know what you want to do. I completely agree. Now, if you don't know exactly what you want to do, if you have like maybe a long-term vision, but you don't know how it will fit within your short-term or your mid-term vision, I would say that also works. Everything will fall into place as things unfold. The program is short, so it's a 1 year as opposed, for example, to the 2 years in the US, but it still gives you the opportunity to explore different areas and different industries, different topics, so that you can really know also, you can maybe get a better understanding of what you really want to do. And yeah, be authentic, be yourself. I think that the program is really open to diversity, as Mohammed said. So if you have an atypical or different maybe professional experience or academic background, that should definitely not stop you from applying. I really think recruiters value diversity, and in the cohort, everyone feels included, and inclusion is such an important thing in our. It was such an important thing in our cohort. I'm sure it is in the upcoming cohorts as well. Yeah, so that's it on my side, and happy to answer any questions as well if you have some. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much. Fuad, do you have anything quickly to add just as a tip, or?
Well, I'm biased for sure, but I would say for everybody who's on the call, just apply. You will not regret it.
That's great. Thank you. So on that note then, the applications will be opening on August 1st. So that's the first round for our next intake. So do keep an eye on those deadlines, the different scholarships, as Tammy mentioned. If they do require an additional application, make sure that you're monitoring that. And if you have any questions, do email in to our inbox. It's on the next slide, and we'd be more than happy to go over a profile review, give you some more insight into the program, or answer any additional questions that you might have. And thank you to the alum for not just volunteering your time today, but maybe you're going to get flooded with emails from prospective students. So
thank you, Mischa, for organizing.
Yeah, thank you. And no problem. Anybody can ask us anything.
Thank you so much. Well,
Thanks
hope you all
have
a great rest of the evening. Thank you to Tammy as well for sharing about the Africa Insight. And on that note, we will say goodbye to everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good luck, students.